My stepsister made me the family villain for 30 years with lies, but when she tried to destroy my marriage at a wedding, I exposed decades of proof, and the entire family was left speechless. I'm 40 years old. I'm a lawyer. I'm married to Rachel, and we have two incredible daughters, and after 30 years of living in a hell fabricated by one single person, I can finally breathe. The thing is, when you try to explain to someone that you've been a victim of systematic manipulation for 3 decades, it sounds like an exaggeration, you know? Like, people think you're being dramatic or that you have persecution issues, but the truth is that my stepsister Amanda basically destroyed my relationship with my entire family for most of my life, and she did it in such a calculated and gradual way that nobody realized it until it was too late, or rather, until I couldn't take it anymore and decided I had to end this once and for all. I guess I should start at the beginning. My dad died when I was 6 years old. Pancreatic cancer. It was horrible, but honestly I don't remember much from that time beyond my mom crying constantly and the feeling that something very important had disappeared from my life. My mom Margaret remarried about a year and a half later. I was 7 or 8 years old, I think. And that's when Richard, my stepdad, entered our lives along with Amanda, his daughter. Amanda and I were the same age, which sounded great in theory, like having a sister your age to play with and grow up with, but from day one, something didn't fit right. I can't say she was an evil child or anything like that, because I didn't understand it that way at the time. But looking back, I can clearly see how from very early on, she learned to manipulate situations in her favor. The first few years were weird, but not terrible. We all lived together in the house my mom had shared with my dad, and Richard brought his 2 sons too, Stephen and Brian, who were a couple years older than Amanda and me. The family dynamic was complicated, because we were basically 2 families trying to merge into one, and my mom was so desperate to make it work that she basically became a different person. Before she was strong, independent, she defended me when something wasn't right, but after marrying Richard, it was like she walked on eggshells constantly, always trying to keep the peace, always giving in when there was conflict. The first thing I noticed was the differential treatment. Although at the time, I didn't have the words to describe it that way. My stepbrothers got allowances. I didn't. When they turned 13, they bought them cell phones. This was like the late 90s, early 2000s, when cell phones were just becoming popular. I never got one. Amanda got everything she asked for, literally everything. New clothes every season, outings with friends, money for the movies, whatever, while I had to wear clothes from my cousins or garage sales. When I asked my parents why there was this difference, Richard always had some excuse, that his kids were used to a certain standard of living, that Amanda was a girl and needed more things, that I was the oldest and should be more responsible and mature, which made no sense because Amanda and I were the same age, but whatever. But what really screwed me over, what really started this cycle of shit that lasted 30 years, was that Amanda discovered very early that she could lie about me and people would believe her. And the first time I realized this was when we were like 12 years old. She broke a vase that my mom had inherited from my grandmother. I mean, it was a super important piece for my mom. It had enormous sentimental value, and Amanda simply said I had done it. I tried to explain that I had been at a friend's house all afternoon. Even my friend and his mom could confirm it, but Richard wouldn't listen. He grounded me for a month. And my mom just said I should apologize to Amanda for accusing her of being a liar. That was the pattern for years. She did something bad, blamed me, and everyone believed her because she cried very convincingly, and I, being male, was automatically the problematic one. In middle school, things got worse because Amanda started to realize she could manipulate not just our parents, but friends, teachers, extended family. She was always very good at presenting herself as the perfect victim in public. Like, if you met her casually, you'd think she's the sweetest and most innocent person in the world. Always smiling, always being helpful with adults, always saying the right things at the right time. But at home, when there were no witnesses, she was completely different. She stole things from me and then said I had lost them, sabotaged my schoolwork, told my parents that I treated her badly or threatened her, and every time I tried to defend myself or explain my version, Richard yelled at me to stop attacking his daughter, and my mom looked at me with that expression of disappointment that basically destroyed me. When it was time to go to college, I knew I had to get out of that house, or I was going to go crazy. I applied to several universities, got a full scholarship to study law at a decent university about 3 hours from home, and I thought I was finally going to be able to escape all that craziness. My parents barely reacted when I told them. Richard just said something like, "Well, it was about time you started fending for yourself," and my mom hugged me, but I could see in her eyes that she was more worried about how Richard would feel than happy about my achievement. Meanwhile, Amanda got a new car for her 18th birthday. My stepbrothers had their tuitions completely paid for. They went to super expensive private universities. And I basically left with what fit in 2 suitcases and $200 I had saved working summers. College was tough. I'm not gonna lie. I worked 30 hours a week at a Starbucks while carrying a full course load, lived in the cheapest dorm on campus, ate basically ramen, and whatever I could get free at student events. I called my mom every 2 weeks or so, always trying to sound positive and like everything was fine. But the truth is, I struggled a lot. She never offered help, never asked if I needed anything, just told me about how well Amanda was doing at her private university, completely paid for by Richard. Obviously, and about the trips they were planning or the new things they had bought for the house. It was like I had become invisible the moment I walked out that door. In my second year of college, things got really ugly. I had gone home for Thanksgiving, my first visit in like 6 months, and I basically spent it locked in my old room because Amanda had turned every family meal into a session of, look at everything David fails to do, compared to her and my stepbrothers. The Friday after Thanksgiving, I had an argument with Richard about something super stupid. I don't even remember what it was. Something about me not having helped enough with cleaning after dinner or some shit like that, and he basically exploded. He yelled at me that I was ungrateful. That after everything he had done for me, what exactly had he done for me? I was a mess, that I was an embarrassment to the family, and that if I didn't like how things were in his house, I could leave and not come back. My mom was there, listening to all this, and didn't say a single word in my defense, just stood there with her arms crossed, looking at the floor. Something broke in me that day, I guess. I went up to my room, put my few things in my backpack, and left. I called a high school friend who still lived in the area. He let me stay on his couch that night, and the next day I drove back to college. I didn't talk to them again for months. Eventually, my mom called me, crying, saying things had been misinterpreted and that I should apologize to Richard, that he was very hurt by my behavior. I didn't apologize, but I started maintaining minimal contact just because, she's my mom, and part of me still had hope that someday she would realize what was happening. I graduated from college with honors, got a job at a decent law firm, started building my life. I met Rachel in my first year as a lawyer. She worked as a financial analyst at a company that was a client of the firm, and honestly, she was the first person in years who made me feel like I was worth something. Rachel is extremely intelligent, has a built-in bullshit detector that's impressive, and from the beginning, she saw through Amanda in a way that nobody else in my family had been able to. The first time Rachel met my family was at a Christmas dinner about 2 years after we started dating, and Amanda immediately tried to play her manipulation game with her, like trying to play the victim, insinuating negative things about me in a super subtle way, that kind of thing she did so well. Rachel told me later that she thought it was super weird that Amanda was so interested in talking badly about me when we had just met, and that something definitely didn't add up with that whole situation. For the next few years, I maintained a superficial relationship with my family. I went to important events, called on birthdays and holidays, but I had basically accepted that I was never going to have a real and close relationship with them. Rachel and I got married, had our first daughter, and my mom came to visit us a couple times, but Richard never came. He always had some excuse. Amanda by that point had gotten married and had her own kids, and I honestly thought that maybe she would finally leave her obsession with me and focus on her own life. How naive I was. What I didn't know at the time was that Amanda had been spreading lies about me and the family for years. Turns out she told everyone that I had abandoned the family when they were going through a financial crisis, which was completely false. I left because Richard literally kicked me out of the house, and there was never any financial crisis. She told my aunts and uncles and cousins that I was arrogant and thought I was better than them because I was a lawyer. She told family friends that I treated my mom badly and broke her heart every time I ignored her. Again, I called regularly. It was Richard who didn't want anything to do with me. I discovered all this years later, but at the time I only noticed that the extended family was increasingly cold to me at family gatherings. They looked at me weird, made passive-aggressive comments, that kind of thing. Then came the incident at my job. I worked at a medium-sized firm, maybe 30 to 40 lawyers, and one day my boss called me into his office with a super serious expression. He asked me if there was anything I needed to tell him about my personal life, because he had received a concerning call. Turns out Amanda had called the firm, pretending to be a concerned friend, to inform them that I had serious problems with drugs and alcohol, and that she was worried this was affecting my work. This was completely false. I barely drank socially and had never touched drugs in my life, but she said it in such a convincing way, with so many specific details, all made up, that my boss felt obligated to investigate. Fortunately, I had an impeccable reputation at work and could prove everything was false, but the fact that she went to that level, trying to destroy my professional career, was terrifying. I confronted Amanda by phone after that incident. I asked her directly why she had done that, what she gained from trying to ruin my life. She cried, of course, said she didn't know what I was talking about, that she would never do something like that I had always hated her, and now was trying to blame her for things she hadn't done. I recorded that conversation. By the way, because by that point Rachel had convinced me that I needed to start documenting everything. In the recording, you can clearly hear how Amanda changes her story 3 times, constantly contradicts herself. But when I point out the contradictions, she simply starts screaming that I'm an abuser and hangs up. But the worst, the absolutely worst thing Amanda did, came about 3 years after that. My stepbrothers Stephen and Brian were at a family gathering. There were several cousins and aunts and uncles present, and Amanda decided it was the perfect moment to drop a nuclear bomb. She told everyone that when we were kids, I had sexually abused her. She said it had happened for years, that she had blocked the memories from trauma, but that now in therapy everything was coming to light. Then, as if to give more credibility to her story, she said I had also abused my stepbrothers when they were little, and a couple of younger cousins. When my mom called to tell me what Amanda had said, I literally couldn't believe what I was hearing. It was so absurd, so completely disconnected from reality, that my first reaction was to laugh because I thought it was some kind of bad joke. But my mom was crying, saying she needed to know the truth, and I realized she was actually considering this could be true. I told her, of course it was false, that Amanda was lying like she had lied about me for 30 years, and I asked her to talk to Stephen and Brian because they could confirm nothing like that had happened. My mom said she would, but I could hear in her voice that she was doubting, that part of her wanted to believe Amanda. That was probably the lowest point of my life. The idea that my own mother could believe I was capable of something like that. After everything I had endured, after 30 years of being the scapegoat of that family, was too much. Rachel found me on the floor of our bathroom, crying in a way I hadn't cried since I was a child, and she just hugged me and told me we were going to figure it out, that the truth would eventually come to light. I decided it was time to have a serious conversation with my parents, face to face, without interruptions. I called my mom, told her I needed to talk to her and Richard, that I was driving over that weekend and hoped they would give me at least 2 hours of their time. I arrived on a Saturday morning. Rachel stayed with the girls at a nearby hotel. He didn't want them in that house, and I sat in front of my parents in the same living room where I had spent my childhood. I told them everything. Not just about the false abuse accusation, but about the previous 30 years. I told them about every time Amanda had lied about me, and they had believed her. I told them about the differential treatment, about how they had made me feel like a second-class citizen in my own family. I told them about the call to my work, about the lies Amanda had spread in the extended family. I showed them recordings of conversations with Amanda where she contradicted herself. I showed them text messages and emails that documented years of her manipulative behavior. I told them that Stephen and Brian could confirm the abuse accusations were false, that it was physically and chronologically impossible for what Amanda said to have, which happened. Richard stayed quiet most of the time, which was weird for him. My mom cried, constantly wiped away tears, and at one point said something that broke my heart in a different way. I knew something wasn't right. I knew for years, but I was afraid to admit it because that would mean I had failed to protect you. I asked her if she really believed I had abused anyone, and she said no, that in her heart she knew I wasn't capable of that, but that Amanda was so convincing she had planted the doubt. I left that conversation feeling absolutely nothing. Not relief, not anger, not sadness, just emptiness. I drove back to the hotel, told Rachel what had happened, and that night I ended up in the hospital with acute pancreatitis. The doctors said it was probably triggered by extreme stress. My body basically had said, I can't take anymore, and shut down. I was hospitalized 4 days, with pain I wouldn't wish on anyone, and all that time I kept thinking about how I had gotten to this point, how one single person had been able to cause so much damage for so long. When I got out of the hospital, Rachel, Stephen, and Brian had a meeting with me. Turns out my stepbrothers had been so outraged by Amanda's accusations that they had talked to the rest of the extended family, making it very clear that nothing Amanda said was true, that they had never been victims of any abuse, and that they were fed up with seeing how I was treated. It was the first time in my life I felt that someone in that family, besides my mom, and that barely, was on my side. Stephen told me something I'll never forget. We always knew Dad treated you differently, and we felt guilty about not saying something before, but we thought things would eventually work themselves out. We were wrong, and we're sorry. Among all of us, we came up with a strategy. The entire family, everyone Amanda had tried to manipulate for years, we were going to implement total silent treatment. No confrontation, no drama, just complete indifference. Amanda would arrive at family events, and everyone would greet her politely, but nobody would engage with her. Nobody would respond to her attempts to create drama. Nobody would give her the attention she so desperately sought. It sounds childish, maybe, but the thing with people like Amanda is they thrive on conflict and attention, whether positive or negative, so the worst thing you can do to them is treat them like they're irrelevant. For the next 2 years, Amanda became increasingly desperate. She sent long text messages to different family members trying to create conflicts between us, but we all shared screenshots with each other and laughed at how obvious her manipulations were. She made Facebook posts about fake family and betrayal, but nobody commented. She tried to organize family events to regain control, but nobody attended. We could see how she was falling apart, how her carefully constructed image of the perfect victim was crumbling, and, honestly, it was satisfying in a way that's probably not very healthy to admit. But after 30 years of her shit, she deserved to see her lose control. The thing reached its peak about 6 months ago, at Brian's wedding. It was a big, beautiful wedding. We were all there, including Amanda and her husband. Rachel and I were at our table, enjoying the reception. When Amanda approached, she had been drinking. You could see it in her eyes and how she swayed slightly. And she sat in the empty chair next to Rachel. She started with her typical manipulation game, trying to make casual conversation but throwing passive-aggressive comments about me, about how I had destroyed the family, about how everyone hated me but was afraid to tell me. Rachel just looked at her without saying anything, which clearly frustrated Amanda because she was used to provoking emotional reactions in people. Then Amanda made her final mistake. She took out her phone and showed Rachel a series of supposedly my text messages where I said horrible things about Rachel, about our marriage, about our daughters. The messages were obviously fake. The number wasn't even my phone number, and some of the references didn't make any sense. But Amanda was so desperate she thought this would work. Rachel took a picture of Amanda's phone screen, stood up, called me and Brian over, and we told Amanda to leave. She started screaming, making a scene in the middle of the reception, saying we were all monsters, that we had ruined her life, basically having a complete meltdown in front of like 150 guests. That night, after Amanda left the wedding, her husband practically dragged her out. I did something I had been wanting to do for months. I entered the family group chat, the one that included all the aunts and uncles, cousins, my parents, my stepbrothers, basically all the close family, and posted screenshots of years of manipulative messages from Amanda, messages where she admitted to lying about me to other People. Messages where she contradicted herself about events that supposedly had happened. Messages where she tried to turn different family members against each other. And, at the end, I posted the photo Rachel had taken of the fake text messages Amanda had shown her. I wrote only one thing: 30 years of this. 30 years of lies, manipulation, and trying to destroy my life. Here's the evidence. Do with it what you want, but I'm done. The chat exploded. People started sharing their own experiences with Amanda, things I didn't know about. My cousin Jessica told how Amanda had tried to ruin her relationship with her boyfriend years ago by spreading rumors that he had been unfaithful to her. My uncle Mark told how Amanda had borrowed money from him, saying it was for a medical emergency with her son, but then he found out she had spent it on a trip to Vegas. Story after story, everyone revealing how Amanda had lied, manipulated, and betrayed their trust for years. Amanda tried to enter the FANE chat to defend herself. Wrote like 3 paragraphs trying to play the victim again, saying everything was taken out of context, that people were misinterpreting her intentions, the same playbook she had used for decades. But this time, nobody bought anything. My uncle Carlos, who's normally super patient and kind with everyone, simply wrote, "Enough, Amanda. We all know who you really are." After that, Amanda left the group chat, and as far as I know, hasn't spoken to any family member since. 2 days after the wedding, my mom called me. She cried for like 20 minutes before she could speak coherently. She told me she was sorry, that she had been a terrible mother, that she had failed me in the most fundamental ways possible. She told me she had seen the signs for years, but had chosen peace over doing the right thing, and that decision had cost me a normal childhood and a healthy family relationship. She asked me if I could ever forgive her. I told her I needed time, that 30 years of pain don't heal with a phone call, but that I appreciated that she had finally seen the truth. Richard never called me, never apologized, but Stephen told me he also finally admitted he had treated Amanda like she could do no wrong and me like I could do no right, and that he regretted that. Today, I have a cautiously optimistic relationship with my mom. We talk every week. She's come to visit the girls several times, and she's genuinely trying to rebuild what was destroyed. With Richard, it's cordial but distant, which honestly seems fine to me. Stephen and Brian have become real people in my life. Like, we see each other regularly. Our kids play together. It's something I never thought I'd have. The extended family has also been surprisingly understanding and welcoming, like everyone felt guilty for believing Amanda for so long, and now they're overcompensating. Amanda, as far as I know, moved to another state. Her husband divorced her about 3 months after the wedding. Apparently, that incident was the straw that broke the camel's back after years of similar behavior. I know it sounds ugly, but I don't feel anything for her. Not anger, not pity, not satisfaction. It's like she finally became what I had wanted her to be for 30 years, irrelevant to my life. For the first time in my adult life, I feel free. Free from the constant anxiety of wondering what lie would come next. Free from the need to prove to my family that I'm a good person. Free from living in the scapegoat role that Amanda had assigned me when we were 8 years old. Rachel told me the other day that I looked different, lighter, more at peace, and she's right. After 30 years carrying the weight of someone else's lies, I was finally able to let it go. I don't know what will happen with my family in the long term. Relationships are improving, but there are 30 years of damage to repair, and I don't know if that's completely possible. But for the first time, I feel like I have the option to decide what kind of relationship I want with them, instead of just accepting the role they assigned me. And that, after all this, feels like a victory.